Okay, I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking into the global temperature graphs and the fraud associated with them. And one person who is a hero in this regard is Professor Emeritus Ole Humlum. He's a Danish professor specializing in geomorphology, so he's a climatologist. His climate change views are, of course, that he thinks that the evidence points that most climate change, if not all of it, up to the present time, is natural, and has published a paper together with Solheim and Stordal called Identifying Natural Contributions to Late Holocene Climate Change. You should check that out. And also a more recent paper, The Phase Relation Between Atmospheric Carbon Dioxide and Global Temperatures, in 2012. That is a very, very good paper, which shows that the changes in atmospheric CO2 are more related to natural changes than anthropogenic changes. Now, of course, Humlum runs the Climate For You page, which is very, very important that we keep things like this going in opposition to the frauds that are put forward on fanatical crackpot sites like Skeptical Science and Desmog blog and the climate denial lists that they run. I mean, it sort of goes with the territory that in these days, when you demand evidence-based climate science, you're attacked by these crackpot CAGW fanatics. Now, the groupthink associated with climate change among a small group of climate scientists, self-styled climate scientists, that's what they call themselves, has extended to changing global temperature graphs and data. This is deception, it's a scam, it's a climate fraud, and it's something we must expose. And Humlum has been really at the forefront of this, instrumental in exposing what they've been doing over the last 9-10 years. Now, the frauds, the adjustments, the homogenizations, and so on, the scam that's been going on in global temperature data has only been exposed for the last, say, 9-10 years. So what they were doing before then, we know they were doing the same things, probably to a greater extent before then, but that was not measured and quantified like it has been recently by Ole Humlum and other heroes associated with him on this website. Okay, so we'll move forward here and have a look at some temperature graphs from the climateforyou.com site and give you some idea what I'm talking about, what's been recorded, and what has been done to these the data in the temperature records. So we just scroll down here. It's a very informative site here. Now we will get to the surface temperature records. University of Alabama at Huntsville, global temperature anomaly. Of course, the satellite data set starts in 1979, continues to the present. They're constantly making adjustments to these records every few years or every couple of years. This is the RSS-MSU global temperature anomaly. This is also from the remote sensing system satellite. And as you can see, the latest version is in blue and has increased temperatures by about, I'd say, 0.1 to 0.2 degrees centigrade. Now, this is a satellite data record. And you can see the anomalies here. So the current anomaly, according to this data set, is 0.5, 0.6 degrees. And according to Spencer and Christie, who do the UAH dataset, the anomaly is about 0.4 degrees. Now the satellite datasets are probably quite fairly accurate. I mean, they're not like trying to measure the sea level from space. That is far more difficult and problematic. Which you've probably seen my video on sea levels, the problems associated with measuring that from space. But measuring the temperature of the troposphere from space is not that difficult, actually. And these are near-surface tropospheric measurements we're talking about here, globally. The satellite dataset has strong advantages over the land-based dataset because it's global. Satellite measures every part of the globe, whereas the land-based dataset, certain points are chosen. There's not much representation at the poles, but the advantages to the land-based dataset is that it's longer. If it hasn't been corrupted, then it's obviously superior because it's longer. The problem is it has been corrupted. Here we've got HADCRUT-4 as worked out by the Hadley Centre and the CRU, the Climate Research Unit in the UK. This is the NCDC, Global Temperature Anomaly. This is the GISS from the Goddard Institute of Space Studies in New York. This was run by Jim Hansen for many years, and now it's Gavin Schmidt that's running it. Schmidt has no degree in science, so how he became the head of GISS, I've got no idea. It's a bit odd, but so you're hardly going to expect anything scientific coming out of GISS. And it is the most extreme and most, let's say, accuracy challenged dataset. And it's the one, of course, that alarmists go to straight away. There are three main surface datasets, and they all take the land surface data from the Global Historic Climatology Network. So they're all basically using that network. Now you can see already from these charts that there has been some adjustments in the last couple of years. Always to the warming side, as you might expect. Adjustments never, ever are towards cooling or a lowering in the rise of the temperature rise. They're always in the direction of an increase in the temperature rise or an increase in the slope of the temperature rise. This is what Humlam is talking about when he's talking about groupthink affecting these climate scientists, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to match the data with their projections from the climate models. So they're believing the climate models more than they're believing their own data, which, as you might expect, is a little bit problematic for a scientist. Now, what Humlam has done is over the last 10 years, actually since 2008, he has made a maturity diagram for each data set showing the changes that have happened to each month's data over the last, it's almost 10 years now, so 9.5 years. So this is the MSU RSS change to the data. There's not a lot changed up until 1999. Then a lot of warming has been added. So these are ongoing versions, ongoing changes to the satellite dataset, and some of that could well be genuine. Now, when we come to the three main surface temperature datasets, global datasets, we've got HADCRUT here. I found the HADCRUT-3 dataset to be fairly reliable and probably one of the best ones, best dataset. but it has been changed to Hadkrut 4 now, and as you might expect, a much steeper temperature curve and very large changes due to adjustments, homogenization, etc., etc. This is what they claim. And these are the changes that have taken place over the last 9 years to the original monthly values. Now, as I said before, what happened prior to 2008, we know that the data has also been changed prior to that. But definitely since 2008, there have been massive changes to the data. And this is where Humlum's work comes in very useful, because we can see it, what they have done. And generally, as you see here, all values have been warmed, but in particular, any warming peaks in the original data in 2008 have been taken out. Here you've got a peak in the 1880s, as I said before, associated with the 60-year Yoshimura cycle. That peak in temperature has been taken out. Similarly, the 1940 peak in temperature has been taken out. And the temperature record generally has just been smoothed. And this is so that it looks more like the CO2 rise in the atmosphere. So now you've got a smoother rising temperature graph, which looks more like the CO2 rise, alleged anthropogenic rise in CO2 in the atmosphere. Going forward, the NCDC data, as you might expect, has also been severely altered. And you can see here that, again, similar things have happened. Peaks in temperature, particularly in the 1880s, 1890s, and peaks in temperature in the 1930s have been taken out and cooled. And after the 1940 peak, the cooling after 1940 has been taken out and warmed. And then after 1970, you've got a fraudulent addition of warming after that of about 0.1 degrees. So again, the whole idea has been to change the data record, change the temperature record, so that it matches what they think it should be, or what they think it should have been, to match their computer modeling. Here's another representation of it, showing the NCDC adjustments in the last 9 years. You take 1 month, say you take May 2008, the difference then was 0.39 centigrade. And the difference now is 0.47 centigrade. So they've increased the difference between the anomalies. Okay, now we'll get on to the GISS. This is the maturity diagram from GISS showing the net change. This is the GISS change of monthly values in the last 9 years. We see a similar thing, so except larger. Up to each monthly adjustment has been up to 0.2 degrees centigrade. Generally before 1940, it's been cooled. All temperatures, back to say 1900, have been cooled because it was too warm for them. They didn't want it that warm, they cooled it. And after 1940, they warmed the temperatures because they thought they were too cool. The measured temperatures were too cool. So after 1970, again, they thought the temperatures were too cool, so they warmed them 0.1 degrees, an average of 0.1, sometimes up to 0.2 degrees in each month. So the temperatures, the data has been changed to match what the scientists think they should be or should have been. Now, when we compare the satellite satellite measurements, to the land-based data, so the satellite is in blue, the land-based data is in green, red, and so on, pink. You can see, this is quite interesting, you can see that in the first half of the graph, right up until, let's say, 2000, the blue is on top. Notice that? And after 2000, the blue becomes on the bottom. That means that the satellite data set has not seen much warming overall. But the land-based data has shown cooler temperatures before 2000 and warmer temperatures after 2000, which tells you that they've been fraudulently adjusted. Quite big adjustments. Now this, of course, leads to your trends. If you're making fraudulent adjustments, you're going to have fraudulent trends. The 30-year trend from the satellite is virtually nothing, 20-year trend virtually nothing. But increase, the shorter the period you're measuring, the more the trend increases because of your fraudulent adjustments. The same for the land-based data. Which is now more in accord with the CMIP5 models. Now, this is a very, very important graph. This is the Hadcroft 4 in a 50-year annual trend. So here you can see the peaks in the Yoshimura cycle around late 1800s. It's actually 1940, so when you got a 50-year trend, it peaks about 20 years after the actual peak. So the peak was actually in 1940, and then in this trend it peaks around 1953 or so. Then you get a dip down to a minimum about here was 1975. And then 15 years later it turns on the 50-year annual trend graph. Now the temperature turned again about 2005, turned downwards, and of course the 50-year trend is still rising. It's now at a peak. So the actual temperatures are now going to fall. This graph is very important because it reveals the Yoshimura cycle, which is not acknowledged by the IPCC. They think it doesn't exist. Here it is in the data. You can see it's clear as the nose on your face. Now it's also worthwhile to have a look at the Central England air temperature. This temperature is the longest record we have in the world. Actual thermometer measurements from Central England. And the measurements have been taken since 1659. In other words, the depths of the Little Ice Age. And you can clearly see from this that the temperature record at a low was in the late 1690s, 1690 to 1700. That's when the temperature peaked downwards. That's the coldest it's been, probably right through the Holocene. That's probably the coldest that the climate's ever been in the last 10,000 years. And what would you expect after that? Of course, you'd expect a rise. But there's been no noticeable change in this due to the addition of our CO2, which mainly occurred, of course, after 1945, post-war, World War II. And there's been no noticeable change in that due to our carbon dioxide emissions, the supposedly powerful greenhouse gas that is driving climate change and global warming. Instead, we see just the normal natural cycles that have happened since the year dot. It's also instructive to have a look at the Arctic versus the Antarctic temperatures. From the satellite era, 79 to the present, and you can see that there has been a warming in the Arctic, but no warming at all in the Antarctic. Actually, you might say there's been a slight decline in temperatures in the Antarctic over the satellite record since 1979. Of course, this is totally in contradiction of what the CO2 global warming hypothesis says, and what all the climate models say, what all the computer models say. They say that both the Arctic and the Antarctic should be warming, but they're clearly not. They're going in opposite directions. Now, while we're here, we should also have a quick look at the supposed hotspot that's meant to be there, around 10 kilometers high above the equator. This is a section of longitude through the atmosphere showing the North Pole here, South Pole here, the equator there, and this is the atmosphere going upwards at 10 kilometers high. There's supposed to be this big hot spot caused by greenhouse gases, caused by more CO2, our CO2. It's meant to be there. Let's have a look and see if it really is warming at 10 kilometers above the equator. This is the RSS-MSU satellite data. Now wait a minute, this is 17 kilometers, shows a very strong cooling. Could be due to CO2, could be due to the less solar insolation. And also there's been effects from a couple of volcanic eruptions, Chichon and Pinatubo. And this is the 10 kilometer height where we're supposed to see the massive warming from more greenhouse gases. Instead, it's flat. Unbiased person would say that's totally flat. There's no warming due to the extra CO2 that we've supposedly put into the atmosphere. 4 kilometer in height has been a slight warming. 2 kilometer in height, again a slight warming, something similar to the 4 kilometers. Here's the tropics at 200 hectopascals, which is about 12 kilometers, slightly above the 10 I was talking about. Temperatures are totally flat. And here's 300 hectopascals, again the tropics. This is Hadat, which is this is the balloon data. So the balloon data also shows very little, very slight warming at 9 kilometers. Here's the tropics, tropical data from Hadkrut 4, which again shows a very slight rise, hardly, maybe, well, what would you say, 0.3 degrees, shown on the same scale as the this data here. This shows the measured temperature from the dodgy surface data. Even though this is probably exaggerated, this measured part, it's still way below, actually 3 times below what is expected from the models at 300 hectopascals, and it's the opposite to what you'd expect from the models at 200 hectopascals, so 12 kilometers, 9 kilometers. And similarly, the measured's also 3 times less than what you'd expect from the models on the surface. And the measured, as I said, has been exaggerated. So even though they've exaggerated the measured temperatures, it's still only 1/3 of what I predicted from the models. So probably if they could have got away with it, they would have tripled that. Made it even more fraudulent than it is now. Now OLR is something alarmists talk about a lot, which is outgoing long-wave radiation. Now here's a scatter plot of OLR in blue, the blue dots, over the entire atmosphere, over the entire globe, 90 north to 90 degrees south. And the red line is a polynomial fit of that. And over the same period, atmospheric CO2, of course, has been rising slowly, continuously the whole time. This is a graph since June 1974. And you can see that there's no correlation really between outgoing long-wave radiation, which varied down and then up, versus atmospheric carbon dioxide. Now the infrared wavelength covered is 10.5 to 12.5 microns. So it covers the main part of the atmospheric infrared window that is supposedly being reduced by the extra CO2. In other words, this line should have been going down the whole time, because CO2 is reducing the atmospheric window as it increases. Instead, we got the opposite. We got it going up. So our line is increasing while atmospheric CO2 is increasing. So that's the opposite of what is predicted by the carbon dioxide drives global warming stuff. Now also on this excellent website you'll find climate and clouds. Have a look at that and move down to relative humidity. The claim has been that as CO2 increases, humidity increases. As you can see there over the entire record, relative humidity has been going down at all levels of the atmosphere. And in specific humidity as well, it's also been going down at most levels, except close to the surface where there's been a very, very slight, small rise. Now, clouds are very important in determining the Earth's temperature and climate. If we look at a scatter graph of the total cloud cover versus global surface air temperature, you can see that they are related. This is the cloud cover down here in percent. When there's less cloud cover, you get warmer temperatures. When there's more cloud cover, 70% for example, you get lower global temperatures. The difference there is half a degree. When there's, let's say, a 6% difference in cloud cover, it's a half a degree difference in global temperature. So the two are closely related. So the argument by the alarmists has always been that, oh, solar activity is falling, temperatures are going up, therefore CO2 is to blame. No, it could be that the solar activity is falling and cloud cover could be falling. And then you can still get an increase in temperature even if solar activity is falling. Okay, I'll just show that to you. A little bit further down we have this very nice graph which shows Hadkrut 3 temperature record. This is the Hadkrut 3 global surface temperature record from 1983 to 2011. And here we've got the tropical cloud cover in percent over the same period. And as you can see, they're closely correlated. When the cloud cover in 1983 was 66%, the temperature was around zero anomaly. And when the cloud cover fell from 66% to 60%, as it had by the year 2000, here you've got an increase in temperature of around half a degree centigrade. So 6% fall in cloud cover, half a degree increase in global temperature. That is how you can get an increase in global temperatures while solar activity is actually falling. Now I think I'll stop there for this video. There's a lot of information there for you to follow up. There's a lot more stuff on the Climate4U site, which is terrific. There's a lot about the sun. This is solar irradiance reconstructed over the last 400 years. It's a fantastic resource. Make use of it. Thank you.